Welcome to episode 61 of the Hoopsfix Podcast with me, your host, Sam Nita, full-time British basketball advocate. And on this week's show, we are joined by basketball royalty, none other than Peter Scantlebury. You name it, he has done it. One of the massively underappreciated legends of the game in this country. BBL All-Time leading scorer and actually all over the all-time leaderboards because he has such a long and storied career here in the UK. And we go into all of that stuff, but not just that, also with the national team, where he is England's GB's second most capped player ever to play the game. So yeah, there's so much stuff to go into, not just as a player, but also as a coach. He's done it all, and this was a super enjoyable conversation. You know, I spoke to a few different former teammates of him and friends of his, and they all had hugely positive things to say, namely that he's one of the friendliest guys in the game, and I second that. Not a bad bone in his body, and super friendly, and so I really enjoyed this conversation. Before we do get into this week's show, please take a minute to check out our Patreon account. That's patreon.com/HOOPSFIX. There you can sign up to give us a monthly donation of as much or as little as you'd like to help us doing the work that we're doing, trying to build a British basketball media empire here, and we can only do it with you, our audience's support. So please go and check it out, patreon.com/hoopsfix. As always, if you have any feedback, drop me an email, sam@hoopsfix.com. You can reach out to me on every single social media platform at Hoopsfix. And then finally, if you're listening on iTunes, please take 2 seconds to give us a rating and review. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know what you think in the comments below. One final thing, the internet was very choppy at times. It fluctuated in and out. At times it was absolutely fine, and then other times the video in particular got very pixelated, but generally the audio is fine. But do please bear that in mind. I am working on a software solution to fix that. I think there is some stuff where I can record it at both his end and my end, and then the guest will have to send me the file afterwards, and that should lead to a perfect quality recording. But yeah, I'm working on it. Hopefully it will improve in the future, but it shouldn't affect the recording too much. Anyway, that is enough from me. Here is this week's show, episode 61, with the great Peter Scantlebury. Pete, welcome to the show.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Okay, so I always start at the beginning. Obviously, your career is very esteemed, goes down in the record books, but the beginning is always interesting. So can you talk about the early years and kind of how you ended up first picking up a basketball?
Yeah, it was just by accident, really. I used to go to Cub Scouts, and then I used to play all different games there. Basketball was one of them. So I just had a little runner. I don't quite like this. Then when I went into high school, they had a team, middle school, sorry. They had a team to play the high school side. So I thought, yeah, I'll give it a go. We had a game. Then I went up to high school where I met a guy called Kevin Hibbs who really played a big part in my basketball career. And he took me on from there, really. It just started because of basketball. That was all it was.
So what sort of age were you when you kind of were first getting into it?
I was around about 12, 13, something like that. But again, my main sport was cricket at the time. My dad was from the West Indies, Barbados. That was their number one sport. So cricket would have made me. Bit of athletics, and then basketball came along on the scene.
Have you got any regrets about leaving cricket behind?
Well, I'll never know now. I'll never know. I did have a trial for Surrey Cricket Club when I was about 17, but it was really too late by then. Basketball had taken over by then. So yeah. Who knows what would have happened.
Do you remember kind of what it was that made basketball take precedence? You know, like was there a moment, or was there a certain role model or inspiration that kind of suddenly made you think, oh, do you know what? Actually, I really want to pursue this basketball thing.
I think it just really was the fact that I started playing, and as I got older, I got a little bit better. And then all of a sudden, I was like, wow, we're winning stuff now. Enjoyed that. Before I know it, by the time I was 18, I think it was, I was playing at England Juniors, 17, 18, playing the England Junior side.
Wow. So you won under-16 national titles at school as well, right?
Yes, yeah, we did. I was playing for a year older. Again, Kevin Hibbs, who was a coach of the team,
Yeah.
and I remember back at the time, I trying to think of the name of the program. I could go for it, maybe. I can't remember the name of the program, but anyway, a bit of it was put on that. It was like a magazine show, like they have these Blue Peter magazine type things, and part of that was on there. I think that might have been the time I really started getting the bug for it, and we ended up playing in Swiss Cottage in London, the final, and we ended up winning that. So that was a good day.
You grew up in South London, right, Mitcham?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, went to school Eastfields High
Okay.
School in Mitcham. So myself, my brother, there's been a few guys that come through Eastfields that have played in the BBL, Roger Hosanna, Andrea Lane. So there's a few guys that come through through that system.
I was gonna say what was the junior basketball sort of landscape like in London in those days? When you talk about sort of rivalries and other players that you had your eye on as sort of top competitors, who were they?
In terms of the National League scene, we didn't really get involved on that till after we won that school national championship. So about 16, 17, Kevin went down to Guildford, started a junior team at Guildford, and obviously most of us from our school team, and that was really the start of it all. And Crystal Palace were our main rivals. Steve Bucknell played there, Michael Hales, Trevor Anderson. So there's a few names from the past that were there. Joe White, those type of guys we played against. They were the main competition. The funny thing is, I think the year before, 2 years before that, I tried out for Crystal Palace, so it wasn't too far from where I lived. I did. They gave me a letter to come back and what have you, but it was in another place called Sutton. So I'm like, oh, I can't be bothered to go that far. So that was the end of that, I thought, until Kev started the National League side.
Oh wow! It shows the importance of having sort of National League clubs within close proximity to you, right? Because if you don't have it, then it just becomes too long. Unless you're going to move, it's it kind of rules out as an option.
Well, not only that, I think the big importance is the people in the game. I mean, with him, we wouldn't have gone to Guildford if he hadn't got the minibus from school to take us to Guildford every week, or to practice, or open up the court at practice, so we could practice. Every lunchtime, before school or after school, any breaks, we would get in there and we would be playing, and he would be in there supervising us. And I don't see that nowadays.
Wow.
You don't see that.
Well, one of the nice stories, like I said before we started recording, I did listen to the UK Basketball Hub's podcast with you, and you were talking about you were actually working at Sainsbury's when he set up that club. Can you talk about kind of what happened there and what happened with Sainsbury's to allow you to then go and start playing National League?
Yeah, as I started, obviously, part-time job, get a bit of money. I thought, well, that's the end of basketball at the weekend. But Kevin came to me and said, right, I'm starting this team. We want you to be part of it. I said, well, Kev, I'm working at Sainsbury's, so I can't. So he said, right, if I can speak to the manager and we can organize different times for you to work, would you do it? I'm thinking, yeah, you never do that. So I'm like, yeah, okay. Didn't think it would happen. And he came back to me and said, yeah, they've decided they've let us go. So weekends you can come and play basketball. So I couldn't turn it down after that. I said I would do. But I still ended up working at Sainsbury's. I must admit, I hated it because I was in a frozen food section every week. So I hated that.
What was what were your memories of kind of your first experiences of National League basketball? The level that you were playing, the guys you were playing against. Kind of what were your memories of that? Obviously, it was a big step up, I assume, from national schools basketball from what you were doing before.
Definitely, I think the first year was a bit of a eye opener for us. We rolling over most teams at school level, and we went to national team level and found it harder. But there was a guy who you probably know, a guy called Sam Stiller. He came along. So it started off just as our school team, and then guys like Sam came along, and a few other guys came along and joined us. So, that improved us with better players. He was a hell of a player at the time, Sam. So that improved the team. And as we improved, we found ourselves at the top of the tree fighting Crystal Palace.
So yeah, go on. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think the second year of our the league, I think we won the cup in Birmingham. Sam, as I mentioned before, MVP at the tournaments, but I think that was the first time we'd won something at a national league level.
And it wasn't long before you were representing the seniors, right?
Yeah, Guildford had a senior club. I think that was part of the reason why Kevin started there, because they wanted to bring some youngsters through. So the second year there, 17 I was at the time, with a couple of us, myself, Sam, a guy called Peter Wright. We all sat on the end of the bench for Guildford. They were maybe second, third from bottom, something like that. So they were getting beat every week. So that gave us a chance to get in. I remember the first game I played against a Birmingham side, it was. There was a big guy, about 6'9", big dude called John Stroder. And junior level, you can get to the basket, do whatever you want. I went to the basket thinking I was doing that. He threw me and the ball out of the court, turned around, get the hell out of here. And that was it. I was like, right, I've got to improve now. I've got to come back from that.
Did you find physically competing against men helped with your own personal development?
It did, but we were playing against men in the local league as well. So we had our kids team playing in the men's local league. So physically that helped us. They weren't, obviously, a lot of them weren't as skillful as us, but some of the tricks you learn, and so they're very physical to try and slow us down. So you have to learn that to overcome if you want to get better, which we did.
Which local league was this? I've kind of I've heard stories about sort of the London local league being super strong back in those days and having some sort of legendary teams in it. What was the situation with the local league?
This was Surrey. Surrey local league, because at our school we were in the Surrey catchment area.
Yeah.
So when we played for anything like the Surrey chips and that type of thing, so that was our catchment area.
And and you were literally your school team playing against men. How did you guys do?
More or less. We did all right. Like I said, it was a learning curve for us. A lot of the guys, funny enough, that played in that local league, you would see refereeing in the junior league games and things like that. Even some of when I got older into the national league, some of those guys were still around refereeing men's national league games. So that was strange.
It's a small, tight-knit community, isn't it? Super small, tight-knit community. So with the seniors, at what point did you start seeing sort of regular minutes and making sort of bigger contributions with the club?
Well, the first year, as I said, we were near the bottom of the league, and then the second year, unfortunately, Kevin and a couple of the other guys left and went with Kingston. Kingston was starting up a junior side there. Guildford moved to Bracknell, and I decided to stay with them. They gave me the chance, so I thought I'll stay with them. And it was that year, my first full year in men's national league, that I started to get more time. I started, which probably would be unheard of now. It's 18-year-olds starting in the national league. But like I said, we weren't very good. We was maybe second from bottom, but they gave you the chance to make your mistakes and learn from them and get better. Obviously, the teams at the time at the top were like Crystal Palace. They were up there. Doncaster were up there. So playing against those guys, you can only but improve.
Yeah. One thing I have been unable to fully fill in the blanks in terms of your career is Winthrop College and the move to the States, and kind of when that happened, how long that happened for, did you do your full 4 years there, or was it only a period of time? Like, can you kind of go through how that came about and sort of what exactly went down?
Yeah, as I mentioned, that was the first year at Bracknell. Then the second year at Bracknell, we had a guard come in by the name of Dan Calandrillo, probably one of the best guards I've ever played with. He came in with Tony Balogan, and Steve Keenan. They were Tony was a naturalized player. Steve and Dan Caladrillo were the Americans. And that year, from finishing maybe second from bottom, we ended up fourth, getting into the playoffs. And again, Sam and myself were playing in that side, and we were playing a lot of minutes. We went to a tournament, end of season tournament in Ireland, and Winthrop were there. They saw us play, and they're like, "Well, how old are you?" Told them how old I was, and said, "Would you like a scholarship?" Jumped at the chance. It's not like it is now where you can research the college and that type of stuff. So jumped at the chance. Yep, I'll go there. Subsequently after that, there were other bigger colleges in NCAA me to if I would go there or to give my word to Winthrop that I would go. And they were NII school. They mentioned a couple of things that would happen which didn't take off. I felt the standard wasn't quite as good as here. So I played the season there. I ended up coming back. But an interesting story, when I first got to America, the guy that picked me up from the airport was Billy Mims, who coached at Leopards and things like that. So again, small world. Yeah. He was just starting out as a grad assistant at Winthrop. So he was just starting out there. So it's just, like I said, it's a small world. And he came over here and he did some good things while he was here.
So sort of getting over to the States, obviously, in terms of your expectations and where I guess it didn't meet them, it was just the competitive level on the floor, or was it other things? Kind of what were the main factors that led to your decision to come back?
No, it was mainly the basketball side of things. It was mainly basketball. I felt that, for one, I wasn't getting time as I thought maybe I could have got or should have got. That was down to the coach. But the standard, as I said, I didn't think it was as good as it was here. So I was, like I said, I stayed the year and then came back.
And in terms of the timing of this, we're in sort of what sort of year was that?
We are looking at 83, 84. I was there, I think.
83, 84.
83, 84, 85, something like that. Around about 84, 85 maybe. I was there. And then I came back. Bracknell offered me a place here. I also started working there as well as in the sports department there, sports development officer.
Yeah.
So I guess basketball back then, it wasn't paying as a full-time wage, so I did sports development there. And some of the things in that area were still going. A few years ago, like I started up a lunchtime basketball league and five-a-side leagues and stuff like that. So a lot of that was still ongoing years after I left.
Wow. So when you came back to England, obviously, you've got a job, but you're still playing basketball. Were you actively trying to pursue a basketball career in the sense of like, I want this to be, my full-time living and be a professional basketball player and not have to do another job as well? Or was it a case of, I love basketball, it's going to kind of always be on the side whilst I'm doing other jobs? Kind of how were you approaching it?
Yeah, that's how it was actually. For me, it was basketball was a secondary thing. You do a job, basketball was a bit of a hobby. Well, a bit more than a hobby, I would say, because I moved out to live in Bracknell and they provided us with didn't drive at the time, so I had to do a lot of walking. But so it was, for me, it wasn't really that. Nowadays kids could look at like a Michael Jordan or a Kobe or something to get them into the game. We didn't really see the NBA to get us hooked. I remember one summer seeing 76ers, I think it was, Moses Malone playing it in the finals and they won it. So I started thinking, oh, this could be big, basketball could be big, but obviously it didn't translate to here till much later. The teams and the players here that really got you going for me to start off with was Crystal Palace. They had, I remember seeing them at the WICB at Crystal Palace. That was one of the tournaments I've always wanted to play in. It was a big thing. It was the junior section, the women's, the junior ladies, the men's. It was a big tournament. And I only watched it from the sidelines. I always wanted to get in there. People like Alton Bird, Larry Dassey. They drew you to the game. You're like, wow. Mark Sayers as well, who was at Crystal Palace. And then as I got older and started playing in the BBL, as it turned out to be now, people like Dan Davis, Will Brown, Vince Brookins, Steve Bontrager, those are the type of guys that think, wow, I'm playing against these guys. That's what you were trying to aim yourself to be like.
Well, when people talk about that era, everyone talks about the quality of the level of the quality of the import player. Do you feel like for you coming up, it mattered whether or not they were American or British? Like, did you want to see guys that have sort of come from where you'd come from and been through what you'd been through to then be on the stage, or was it actually just you were just wowed by the level of the player? It doesn't matter kind of what their background is and whether or not you can relate to them in that type of way off the court.
Well, I think all round the level of play was better because you had not only the top class Americans. When I mentioned earlier, I was at Guildford. We had a guy called Robin Jones who played backup to Bill Walton when they won Portland Trailblazers, won the NBA championship. So, yes, he was at the end of his career, but he still had something to give in England. And but I also thought a lot of the English guys who were coming through at the time, there wasn't the Bosman ruling. So the best players were here. So the best players, played against each other, and you got better that way. And then for me as well, what helped things, we used to go in the summer as well. We didn't play the season to finish. We would play in the summer. There was a place called North London College where a lot of guys were to play. And that was, again, you hone your skills there. Guys from the BBL to Division 1, lower leagues, whatever. Everybody was there weekend, Saturday, Sunday, was in the gym, practicing, getting better.
I've heard of these legendary North London College runs. Like, how did that come about? Like, and how did that place become sort of the focal point of the basketball community? Was there a particular person that had access to the gym that was opening up for people? Like, how did it actually end up being what it was?
I don't know how it all started, but a friend of mine from school, he used to go there, so he asked me to go down there one weekend with him. And Larry Dassey, who I mentioned before, he was down there a lot. A guy called Bobby Overton. I think he had instrumental in getting the college and getting guys to play there. So those were the two big names when I first went down there. That drew you in really, and it wasn't a place to fear. It wasn't any problems. Everybody together playing, and I had fun.
Yeah, how it should be. So you stayed with Bracknell until the actual BBL was formed, right? Now, do you remember, so that was 86, yes. 87. Do you remember kind of the forming of the BBL? And that, I've been speaking to a few different people that were involved with that closely and kind of talking about the clubs wanting to be in control of their own destiny and didn't feel like they were getting their fair share from the governing body at the time for the finals events and all this kind of stuff. So they wanted to sort of break off. Do you remember kind of the early conversations you heard of the clubs are trying to do something separate, they're trying to break away kind of, and if you do kind of have any memories, what were they?
I do a little bit. At the time for me, I just wanted to play. So you didn't really get involved with the politics or anything like that. As long as you had a team and you could play, that was it. But I do remember the big, opening of the league and how it came about, and it was I think it probably was a good thing that it's proved over the years that it's done a good job to be.
Did you notice a change, from one season, from when it went from the National League to the BBL? Like, if you compare the two from season to season, was there a big change or was it just in name?
I really can't remember, but one of the things I do remember is that sponsors started to become involved, and I can't remember if that was before the BBL time or after the BBL time, but it was around about that time sponsors started getting involved. So the game started to grow. And then in terms of Channel 4 got involved as well.
I was going to say from the commercial development standpoint, with Channel 4 getting involved, with more sponsors getting involved, did that mean for you guys as players, it started meaning that your salaries were increasing and you were getting paid more and more benefits from the clubs?
I think that's when people started to be more professional in terms of player-wise, doing that as their only thing rather than working. I think it must be around about that time that happened. For me, I was still working at the time. I didn't really become professional in its sense till much later, till I ended up going to Newcastle late 90s. So I still worked up until then.
How are you able to balance having a job as well as, you know, being a basketball player?
It wasn't as full on as it got to later on. I think we practiced maybe 3 times a week as a team. You did bits and pieces on your own, and then games at the weekend. So it didn't really impinge on the work until later on, when you had to practice every day, sometimes 2 sessions a day, things like that. That's when it really changed.
Was it kind of mad going from being on the basketball court, playing in front of, you know, thousands of people or whatever, and then waking up the next day and going into your day job?
I don't know about mad, but sometimes you got back after a long trip the night before, and you're going to get up, but you know, you're professional, so you got to do it. You got to do it. Pays the bills.
Was your work always very accommodating of your basketball career?
Well, to start off with the sports development role, yes, they were, because it was part and package of the same thing. I think that's how they come to afford it. The club, they were helping each other. So for the first 5 or 6 years, I did that. They helped me out there, but at the same time, as I said, if I had to do something, I had to be there no matter what. I mean, the difference was, they let you off to play games or practice, but apart from that, you had to be there.
So from Bracknell, you went to Sunderland, right? Can you kind of remember why the move happened and kind of the differences between the two sides?
Yeah, Sunderland were an up-and-coming team then as it goes. I think they were second to Kingston at the time. We were just slightly behind them at Bracknell, but the club structure changed, the coach changed, the way they changed. So for me, it was time to make a move. So I ended up. I knew Craig Lynch, who was the coach at the time. I knew him from he had a season. He was my roommate when he came down. So he's coming up. One of the other guys on the team, a guy by the name of Kenny Nottage, he was a teammate of mine that was at Guildford. So again, I spoke to him. He told me about how good it was, and my best friend, is that this is the start of it. Was Steve Nelson. We got together on an England duty, and he was telling me about the club and saying they want me to come up, and he was telling me how good it was, and and everybody talked me into it. So there was and it was a really good year. Russ Saunders, he was on the team. He was a point guard. Clyde Vaughan, another guy. I think we talked earlier about the financial side of the game, how it improved with sponsors in the league. Somebody like Clyde Vaughan were able to come back and play because of that. You know, yes, he was English, but he could have played in Europe maybe or in the States. But because of the money that was offered, somebody like him that came back, that's why the level was so good. A lot of English guys coming back to play.
So in Sunderland, did you, correct me if I'm wrong, but was that the first year you won the league title?
No, we didn't win the league title. We won the cup. We won the WICB. It was about November time. Steve Bucknell, he got cut from the Lakers. So then he came to Sunderland, which was a big plus for us at that time. And I knew Steve from England junior days, and obviously being my rival at Crystal Palace and stuff like that. So I knew him from then. So as soon as he came, we hit it off. And the team hit it off, and I think we went from strength to strength there. And as I said, the December time, the WRCB tournament we ended up going there. Clyde Vaughan went home to the States. in the States. We were going there with probably 7 guys were working and things like that, and they were like, enjoy your few days. That was it. We didn't think we were gonna win it, but we ended up winning that tournament. So that was a big. I've always wanted to play tournament under the Thames Valley. Great.
Yeah, can you talk about, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but can you talk about the magnitude of the WICB tournament? Obviously, winning it is a big deal, and everyone I speak to from that era talks about it so fondly. Kind of what are your memories of it, and why do you think that it is being held in such high regard after all this time?
Well, why it's been held in such regard? Because you had so many great players and great teams come over. Some NBA players, the guy Mike D'Antoni, who's coaching now at Houston Rockets. I remember playing against his team there. A guy called Antoine Carr. Again, he was there. But the big team at the time for that tournament was Maccabi Tel Aviv. They were like the number one team. And I think the difference why it was time that tournament, the fact that there was nothing like it in this country. With so many great teams and great players coming over to play. And it was. The timing of it was perfect, because between Christmas and New Year, really there wasn't much going on at the time in the league. So putting a tournament in there was a stroke of genius, and getting teams that came over, that was great.
Yeah. So after Sunderland, you made the move to London Docklands at the time, I believe, and that was kind of the early form of London Towers. Can you talk about that first year with the club? Obviously, as far as I'm aware, that was the year that you were pretty much an all-British team, did very well. You were coached by the legendary Joe White. Can you discuss kind of your memories of that season and kind of how it unfolded?
Yeah. To start off with, it was a shame, but towards the end of that season, Sunderland went into financial difficulty. So it was tough for us to get motivated to play, but we still ended up. We won the cup competition. We beat Kingston, who was the biggest team around at the time. We beat them in the semis and then won the final, and we lost to them in the playoff finals. So it was basically came to an end. Time to move on. What are you going to do next? London came up. Spoke to myself and my brother Richard. I think that was one of the appealing factors as well. I'll get to play on the same team as him. Looking at it basketball-wise, the year before, they were horrendous. I think they maybe one or two games all year. And it's like, do you really want to go there? But they had new owners come in. And like you mentioned, Joe White was coaching the team. A guy called Roy Charles in the background. So we went and met, and so my brother Richard, we went and met them. And they sold us a good program, and there was. The first year, we did have two Americans. They were okay. They were okay. I think we ended up top four, mostly English. And then the second year, Martin came in. We ended up third, I think, getting to the playoffs both years. And that was an all English team. Joel Moore was on that team. Ronnie Baker was on that team. Steady Baker was on the year before, and Andrew Bailey as well. So a lot of the guys who were at Brixton joined that squad, as well as myself and my brother. And it was a very good time. We were all friends anyway. So when you're playing with your mates, and everything just runs so smoothly. So it was a good year. But for me as a player, I think time I started to having to step up to be like the guy to leading role rather than follow the American guys, that type of thing. I think that was the time that really the English guys, well, for me in particular, had to step up. I'm pretty sure in terms of the timelines, it was around this time you won 2 England Player of the Year awards, right? Which was, I think it was 92, 93, which would have been around the same sort of time. Do you think that kind of coincided with, you're taking on the role of sort of being the man and taking responsibility on that, sort of started being recognised? Definitely. The BBL is a American dominated league, and I'm one of the few English guys that broke some of that dominance. So yeah, that's definitely that. And also with the England team, we at the time we had won the Basketball Commonwealth Games in Scotland, and we had also went to Malaysia. There we got second to Canada. We were second to Canada. So everything all around about the same time happened. And yeah, I did get those two English Player of the Year trophies in, which was a big thing. It was a big thing for me.
Obviously, now you can look back and you've seen kind of these records that you still hold, and you're all over the BBL leaderboards and stuff like that. How much did individual sort of accolades, recognition drive you, or did you always feel like kind of you were more about trying to win championships and the sort of the team success?
No, you wanted to win as a team. Yeah, these types of things, the records and that type of stuff. You don't really think about it till I didn't really think about it till I finished playing, and then you sit back. And to be funny enough, most people, I guess, during lockdown were bored and whatever. So during this time, I went in to some of the old photos and bits and pieces like that. For years, I keep saying, right, I'm going to put this all together and da. Still haven't done it, but hey, I'm getting there, getting closer. But then you sit back and you realize, wow. Yeah, didn't have a bad career. Yeah, it was good while it lasted. Both playing and coaching.
Yeah.
But
do you have any regrets looking back?
In which way? What do you mean? Playing?
Any way, like in any way when you look back on sort of the heyday of it, is there any part of you think, oh, I wish I'd done this differently, or I wish I'd not changed to this team, or anything like that?
In terms of teams, no, not really. In terms of teams, I think everything happened at the right time for the right reason, I guess. But in terms of me as a player, maybe I would like to have become a bit more professional earlier. I don't know if that would have helped me improve a bit. And then, unfortunately for me, the Bosman ruling came in a bit later for me. At the time, my wife was just having our first daughter, and so it was a bit late to move then. So I would like to have done that, played in Europe. I've seen some of the guys who I grew up with a little bit younger than me, guys like Roger Huggins and Andy Gardner, and they end up going to playing in Belgium. I would like to have done that, but hey, I can't complain. If I had done that, maybe other things wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, if you'd spent time abroad, maybe you wouldn't have been up as high in all the sort of overall leaderboards and everything else because you've had time away. And I do think, part of your legendary status is because of the fact that you were here for so long and able to do all the things, excuse me, that you're able to do domestically for sure. But yeah, talking about the Bosman ruling quickly. I mean, I was waiting to get to it in the career timeline, but seeing as we're kind of on the topic, can you discuss kind of your memories of sort of first recognising that this was going to lead to massive changes in the domestic league, kind of what you and the rest of the players were saying, what the owners were saying, what the clubs were saying, and how it sort of eventually played out?
Yeah, I remember it was a big thing, and I knew a lot of the guys, the top English guys, were looking at Europe, obviously to get more money. So that was the first thing. So if they go to Europe, how is the league going to replace them guys? And that was when the rule came in about five Americans. The English guys that were here, we thought it was cutting people's chances down. I remember the Basketball Association started up at around about that time. So we tried to say, no, it's not right. Give the English guys more of a chance first, which didn't happen. So unfortunately, that's the way it goes. But now the rule is still the same. Probably 25 years later, where there are five foreign guys on a sign.
What was the pushback from the league at the time? If the Players Association and kind of you and groups of guys were saying, 5 Americans coming in is going to decimate English jobs. It's going to not be good for the British game. Kind of what was the response to that? What was the justification on their side for doing it?
I can't really remember too much, but I think maybe financially they were looking at, they can get a better product if they bring more guys in. I don't know. I really can't tell you what their thought process was, but in a way it helped, and in a way it hindered the English development of the game. 'Cause even now, you see a lot of the English guys playing in Europe, but they come back to finish their careers here. And then some of them are outstanding. You look at Justin Robinson, Andrew Sullivan, those types of guys have been played away and then come back and played here. Roger Huggins is another one.
Mm. How many guys sort of immediately left the BBL after the Bosman ruling to play in Europe? Like that first season, it was around 96, wasn't it? 96, 97, I think it was.
Yeah.
Who were the main names that had been playing domestically that sort of instantly went abroad to be able to earn considerably more money?
If I remember right, I think people like T.V. Bracknell was one. Joe Moore, another, went to play abroad. I can't think really of many other guys off the top of my head now. But there was a few which left a bit of a hole, and I guess like I said, you mentioned about why the league did it. Maybe they had to fill those gaps there.
Yeah. Like I feel like from the conversation I've had with other people, there was the owners. Well, the owners said that they were petrified of that basically everyone would leave, and as a result, they wouldn't have the talent, so they need to allow more work permit players. But actually, not as many players left as they had expected or anticipated, and so as a result, you still had the British guys back, but they'd brought in 5 Americans, and then the British guys all of a sudden were relegated to the end of the bench and playing behind, Americans.
Yeah, that did happen. A lot of guys that would have got time ended up not playing as much, and I think I was affected by that. The only time it was when I went to Newcastle, which we'll probably come on to a bit later on.
Yeah.
So I was affected by that there.
So you did your 2 years in London. Was it 2 years or was it 3 years? 91, 92, 90?
Yeah,
go on.
2 years. 2 years at London, and then I went back to Bracknell, what was called Thames Valley at that time.
Yeah.
Again, they were another up-and-coming team. Mick Bett was a good friend of mine from when I played there before. Godfather to his son Josh. The story is Mike Hales, who was the captain of the side as well, very good friend of mine. On our wedding day, they were up there. Mick was trying to talk me to come back and play. I'm like, Mick, I'm getting married. Just leave it for today. But we ended up talking a bit later on and ended up going back. And I think that was a excellent move, because that year I'd won the league title. I'd won one thing before. 89 was the first time I won in the BBL. That was with Bracknell. We had guys called Del Roberts and Brian Kellebrew there. We won the cup, and we also won the trophy that year. Trevor Gordon was on that team. But moving forward to the Thames Valley side, Tony Holly, he was at Bury the year before, I think he was, or Doncaster, something like that, and he came across. Nigel Lloyd was there the year before that, and I've had quite a few point guards to play with, and Nigel was one of the best.
So did your first 2 seasons in Thames Valley coincide with Mick Bett's first 2 seasons as coach in the BBL, and then that's when he won, because he won back-to-back Coach of the Year those 2 years as well, right?
Yeah, well, the year before he was a coach there then, and I think they got to the playoff finals. I think they may have lost to Worthing. They may have come second in the league, but they did win the trophy that year. I think that's when maybe he got the coach. And in the second year, when I was there, we won the league and we won the trophy that year. So but I think that's when he got coach of the year. I think Nigel got player of the year.
Wow. Did you feel like the BBL was growing at that time? Was there a lot of optimism around basketball in the UK? Did you feel like it was kind of on the rise?
Yeah, I think that's when Sky started getting involved a little bit. So I think that was around about the time we had maybe a few games there. But the thing that stood out for me, like end of season dues and things like that. We were going to like Cafe Royale and things like that for the end of season all-star teams and things like that. So there were big occasions that could show that the league's going. I mean, we had. Some of the big sponsors started coming in, like you said, started the London Towers. Soon after that, the Leopards came in, and the things grew from there. Manchester were a big team then as well. They had the I think guys from Indiana were backing them, so they were a big team.
So you obviously experienced a lot of success at Thames Valley. Would you kind of say that was that sort of period was the peak of your days in the BBL?
In terms of playing wise, probably. In terms of playing wise, yeah. Maybe we did win some trophies, but I think coming to Sheffield, my career was probably the peak in terms of the team, and then that helped me get into coaching, which I'll probably talk about later.
Yeah, no, I hear that. So from Thames Valley, you ended up in Newcastle. One of the articles I did manage to dig up from some type of newspaper article archive was you talking about coming to mutual terms with Newcastle to leave because basically that you weren't getting to play and ultimately you felt like you were performing in practice and you weren't getting a chance to kind of show your stuff on the floor. Can you kind of go through kind of what happened in Newcastle, your memories of the situation?
Yeah, like I said, I mentioned I became like somebody who got hurt by the new ruling. The first year wasn't so bad. We had a pretty decent year. A few guys there, guys like Andrew Bailey and Carl Miller, who played in England or played club side. They were there as well. So it was a good family unit, player wise. Ralph Blaylock, he played up there, so he was a hell of a player. So yeah, we were up there. But things turned sour really the second year for whatever reason. I mentioned Craig Lynch, who got me to Sunderland the first time round. He was coach now. A guy by the name of Tom Hancock was the coach originally. He recruited me. Then for some real, I think, family problems, he didn't come back. So Craig Lynch took over. To start off with, I could see that for whatever reason, you get a feeling as a player that you don't figure too much in his plans. But the first year, like I said, wasn't too bad. We did all right. But then the start of the second year, really, really didn't get looking. I was coming to the end of my career at the time, and it's like, well, if I couldn't do it in practice, I would say, all right, fair enough. But in practice, like you said, I was still playing well, still cutting the grade. And when I got to the court, did good things on the court. So, but that didn't lead to the games and that should have happened on the court. That should have happened. So you got a bit frustrated. Funny enough, it was just before Halloween. We came down to Sheffield, and we played. It was a Sky game actually. We lost to Sheffield. I didn't get on the court, and Chris Finch, I just bumped into him in the corridor, and he said, "Oh, what are you going to do next year?" I said, "I don't know, really. We'll have to wait and see what happens. It's going to be a long year from here to finish out, so we'll see what happens." Got back to Newcastle on a Monday. Was called into the office. They said, "Right, we are going to have to let you go. Things aren't working out. Fair enough." But they were good about it. Everything was like you said. We both agreed this wasn't working. So I had Jim Brandon call me up Edinburgh at the time, I think he was. Wanted to go to go at the bottom. And then it must have been like that same weekend, I'm about to go up to Edinburgh. A guy called Matt Gaudio at Sheffield injured his knee, did his ACL. So they're looking for a replacement. So they rang me up. Do you want to come down to have a look at the club? I'm like, well, bottom of the league, top of the league. They've only lost one game at that time. So, hey, I'm going there. I haven't got too much time left. So I'm going to try and, get some trophies there to finish off. So I ended up coming down. But guys like Ian McKinney, Mike Payne, who I played with England side, so they made me feel welcome. The other guys, Todd Cawthorne, Will Johnson, those guys, Terrell Myers was here at the time as well, and a guy called Travis Conlon. They made me feel welcome. And it was like night and day. I'm not talking about just the fact that, you got some court time, but it was night and day the way the team approached everything. That was down to Chris, and I guess the club ethos, because they've always been, they were successful from when they started. So I really enjoyed the couple of practice sessions I had here, and I'll come down, and that was that.
The irony of the Newcastle Eagles situation, based on what you've previously said, was that was the first time that you'd sort of made the transition to being professional full-time basketball player, right, in Newcastle. So kind of like you've finally gone full-time on being basketball only, and then all of a sudden it's actually, okay, well, this it's not working out great here, and then you obviously end up having to move. So all your years in Thames Valley, you were still working a full-time job at the same time?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, Valley. I was still working. But like I said, so when you're talking about regrets, maybe that might be when you're thinking about, well, should I have gone then that late in the day, as you got older. But things work, like I said, things work for a reason. Ended up coming to Sheffield. At the time, we went on a big run as well, so of winning games in the league. It was finding your feet with a new team, a new bunch of players. But I think it came to January time. We were playing Manchester first time in the league. They were the closest rivals. That's where I had a breakout game for the Sharks then. And then from then things have just gone a wood curve as a player. We ended up winning the league that year. That was a fantastic end of the season, playing at Manchester. But I do remember the week before we had 3 games left, and we needed to win 2 out of 3. We had Newcastle on a Saturday, Chester on the Sunday, and then by the time the league finished, we would have played Manchester the last game of the season. We would hope we would have had it done by then, because Chester were near the bottom, Newcastle somewhere in the middle. So we played Newcastle, we beat them. I went over to Craig Lynch, went to shake his hand, and I said to him, thank you. And he's like, thank you. What do you mean, thank you? I'm like, thank you for another championship. So then I walked off, and then the next day we went to Chester, and it was like, we're going to win it here today. I think the crowd thought we were going to win it as well. That wasn't to be. But like I said, things happen for a reason. And a week later, we went to Manchester, final day of the season, biggest crowd of the season, Sky Sports. And it went down to the final second where Terrell Myers hit that shot. And I think that really brought basketball to Sky, I think, after that season, the way that happened. You couldn't have written a script for that to happen.
What are your memories of that game winner? Kind of like, do you remember kind of it being drawn up in a timeout, and like kind of where you were, your positioning, seeing it go in? Did you think it was going in? Did you think you were out of the game? Did you think you were done? Kind of, what are your memories of that actual sort of that final possession?
Well, that game I had done something to my ribs, so I was struggling anyway. But so I came out, put some ice on, and then we did have Chris drew up a play. I went back in, and I remember the ball going to Terrell. It was always going to Terrell, and basically you shoots it, and we're gonna go rebound if we can. So I'm fighting Tony Dorsey. I think he was to get the rebound, so I didn't really actually see a good look of it going in. But then I see everybody jumping up and cheering. The biggest thing for me was the fact that the whole place went quiet except for a little corner where the Sheffield Shark supporters were. They just went wild, and we just it was such a great way to end the season. Such a great way.
I guess that must go down as sort of one of the peak career memories, surely.
Yeah, I think because it was so tight and the way it happened, I think that's got to be the best, one of the best memories, definitely. In terms of definitely winning the league, that was the best one.
So from there, you stayed in Sheffield for another. How long did you end up playing in Sheffield for? 5, 6 years, was it?
I played another 3 years, I think. After that, 3, 4 years after that, we're again, us and Manchester were rivals. The second season, Travers went to Manchester. They ended up winning most things. We won the cup that year, and then that's I think after that the conferences came into play. The North and South Conference. So we won it one year, they won it another year. But my final year at Sheffield, it was us and Brighton, Nick Nurse, who coached Manchester, who's now coaching Brighton at the time. Obviously, he's gone on to bigger things in Toronto, but he was coaching Brighton there. Both of us, again, fighting for similar to the Manchester situation. Whoever won that game would win the league. We were lucky this time. We were at home, and we ended up winning again on a last-second shot by Rob Yanders, who hit the shot. So that's why I say when you ask me about which is the peak years in terms of playing, yes, Thames Valley, but in terms of all the other things, the team were the way we came from behind the odds, because a lot of people didn't fancy us as a team. We had the big names elsewhere. We were just a lot of guys who worked well together, and Chris got the best of us working together. So I think those last few years, I couldn't ask for better to finish off the season. I remember one year talking at a end of season do. The players have voted me the player of the year at the Sharks, and then I said to him, coming from Newcastle, I felt like I was Lazarus, I've risen from the dead. Come back, just showed you that I still had some life left in me. So yeah, those last few years were really more of a statement thing. I could still play a bit, type thing.
And obviously, you're still living in Sheffield to this day, right? So, off the court, was it like kind of? Did you feel like it fitted off the court as well? You kind of were happy in Sheffield. You like Sheffield, or is that just kind of, there must be something about it that's kind of ended up with you staying there for so long?
Yeah, no, well, to start off with, it was a case of like to hear, and my wife's family are from Newcastle, mine are from London, so it was more or less middle of the country, so that was handy, right by the motorway. And then once my daughter settled here, she started school. That was it, really. And we've been here 20 years now. So yeah, we've had Sheffield's been good for us.
So the transition to coaching, you went from retiring as a player and being coach of the same team the next season, right?
Yes, yeah. Well, I had thought about playing another year. I was thinking, well, I was 39 going on. I'm thinking, well, I think I could still play another year and be useful out there. But Chris decided to go to Belgium. The owners of the club asked me if I wanted to be the coach. They didn't want to play coaches either, so they just wanted a coach, because they, as I said, they felt that didn't work. So it was a decision to make. So I thought, well, yeah, I will go ahead, and I took that job.
Had you thought about coaching before then, or had you done any coaching before then, or was that very much like jumping in at the deep end?
I had always coached at you was talking about camps and things with kids and things like that. And at that time I was Laszlo's assistant to the England team.
Okay.
Because as I finished playing for the England team, Laszlo asked me to be assistant to him. That coincided with the time I moved to Sheffield. So I can't really commit now because I need to get back into playing shape. But then he came back maybe a year later, and then I said yeah. So I started assistant coaching for him. So that was, that you got the feel of it, obviously, with Chris. And yes, you start thinking about the coaching side as you come to the end of your career, seeing how these guys do things, and and pick up things from there. So the first year went into coaching. I think we won the first 10 games of the season. It was like, wow, this coaching lark's easy, isn't it? It didn't work out that way. But yeah, so it started off really well. Most of the guys from the team Chris had come back. They made one change, brought in a guy called H.L. Coleman for Jerry Williams, and we had a couple of guys on the bench. Brought back Richard Windle. He had gone to Birmingham at the time. That was a big thing for us because he knows the way we play. At the time, we had lost a lot of guys: Todd Cawthorne, Mike Payne, myself. We're all part of that success story, if you like, at Sheffield. So we all finished at the same time. So we had to bring other pieces in, and Richard was one of those that came back to it and helped big time. And Ian McKinney, who was there for years, Ian was the captain. I chose him as my captain that year, and they knew what it takes to win. So we ended up we had a bit of a slump during the mid-season after a great start. Then towards the end of the season, again we had a bit of a slump. Although we won the cup, beat the Rocks in the cup in the January time, and then came the playoffs. And Sheffield had never won the playoffs before. Semis, finals, but never won it. When I was playing, we got to a couple of finals, and lost in those finals. So we ended up playing London Towers in the semis, who were one of the fancy teams. We ended up beating them. So that was a good win. And then playing Chester in the final. And to win that, I'd never won it as a player. To win it as, your first attempt as a coach, I was like, wow, it blew me. You sit and think about it afterwards, and that's when it hit home. Like, wow, that was it. And then, it was, like I said, it's the first time the club had won it as well.
Was there any part of it that was difficult coaching guys that you'd played with the season before? Like, did you get any pushback from them, or was there kind of like, with the boundaries of sort of the player-coach relationship and stuff like that? Kind of how difficult was that transition?
Most of the guys all the guys were good. With Chris, my last year I was his assistant coach as well, so I guess that natural divide started to happen that year anyway. But most of the guys there, they were good. Leonard Stewart, Justin Phoenix, H.L. Coleman, as I said, Robbie Anders, Nate Rankin, they were the main five guys. And they were really good guys to coach. Like I said, even when we went through those lean spells where we lost a few games, they hadn't lost faith in the coach. There was none of the backbiting that. We just dug in, got it right, and in the end, we ended up winning the playoffs.
One of the things that you said previously on the other podcast was the fact that you felt that Laszlo Nemeth had sort of changed the entire culture around the England national team program. Can you kind of talk on that a little bit and explain what you think he exactly did that sort of made that difference?
Yeah, definitely. I remember the first time I saw Laszlo, he was coach of the Iceland national team, and we played them in 2 games, one in Bracknell, one in Worthing. And I thought, he had this bright white jumper on with all different colours. Like, wow, who's this clown type thing, And then a few years later, he ended up being the coach of the national team. And I remember our first practice, we went up to Reddish Vale. It was the centre of basketball, then up in Stockport. And there was probably about 4 guys turned up for a national team practice. Yeah. It must have been disheartening for him. Myself, Ronnie Baker, maybe 6 guys, Steve, few guys from Oldham, turned up for this weekend of England practice. And he must have thought, what have I done here? But that's where he built the program from. And one of the things he did well was really his man. He got to know the likes of people like John Amici, Steve Bucknell, Spencer Dunkley. Got all these guys working for the England team. And later on, you're talking about Andy Betts, Tony Dorsey, got them to buy into his vision. And one of the things he did as well, not only was he paramount in getting the team play, everybody together on the same page. One of the things is whenever we needed anything, he would always deliver, and a lot of it was out of his own pocket. So when I say that, I mean like we would go away training camps. Coach, we need more water, we need more of this, and he would deliver. So that's that ethos, that culture, everybody bought into him, and I'm sure you know him. He's a personable guy as well. Very, very good guy, good sense of humor. But just when he lost his temper, that we obviously we didn't laugh right there and then, but away from the scenes, we used to have a bit of a laugh at some of the things he would say.
Looking back, currently second most capped player of all time. When you look back at your national team career as a player, before we get into the more the coaching stuff, but as a player, kind of what are the standout memories and the standout teams, teammates, groups that you had when you look back on those times representing England and Great Britain?
I think obviously the standout one would be playing the first game you played. I got selected to play in a tournament in Finland. There was a couple of guys who came in a bit later on, so automatically got a chance to play because the team, we only had a few guys there. And then I think it went pretty well. I remember Clyde Vaughan being on the team. Paul Stimson, who was the leading England cap person before I did. I broke his record. I think he was on the team. So that was a good experience, good eye opener. But as it went on, I think the talent levels increased on that team. Some of the guys I mentioned towards the end of my England career, I played with like John Amici, the Spencer Dunkleys, the Steve Bucknell. I played with them towards the end of my career. They that from that level, from where we first started, it shows how far it went. And along the way, we to start off with, we were all young, so we all grew together. I remember going to a tournament in Portugal. Joel Moore, Roger Huggins, Steve Nelson, Andrew Bailey. We were all young guys, learning our trade, if you like. And I think, again, because of me being one of the elder statesmen, I had to step up a bit more, which helped me as a player. And I ended up becoming captain of the side. Dave Ransom was the coach at that time. And like I said, we were a young team. I was probably one of the oldest guys on the team, maybe like 25, 26. So from then, for the next 10, 11, 12 years, I was captain of the England team. And I'm proud of that because that's a long achievement.
Are there any particular victories, big scalps that you took that kind of stick out in your mind?
Yeah. I remember when Laszlo came along, one of the things he taught us was the European play, the how to beat them, the way they played. We could do, it couldn't change our natural game, but mentally he made us stronger. And a couple of times we went to places like Slovakia and Belarus, the people, you go there and teams play games, if you like, with you. Can't get practice time, you can't do this, no balls, this, that, and the other type of thing. And this happened when we were in Slovakia, and we ended up beating them, and that was a big win for us, because at the time, obviously people don't see England as a strong nation in basketball, but at the time we started to make waves. It was a shame that we didn't get the backing in terms of the time to put the national team together, because we would meet up, say on a Sunday after the BBL games, play the first game on a Wednesday, which we would normally get beat. The next game would be like the following Saturday. We would get better, and then we'd normally win the third game. So if we had the time together as a team, it would have been much better. And I think part of that was one of the reasons I had when I took over as the Commonwealth Games team, to talk about a bit later on. That came from that experience about having teams together as much as possible. I remember early days, I think, though, for me, the biggest win early days, we were in Turkey, and we were like qualifying rounds. We had never got to the big, we in the groupings and stuff. We were just qualifying to get into the groups. And we went to Turkey. It was us, Sweden, Turkey. Can't remember who the other team was. We were playing. The guy called Dave Gardner. We were one down. He was on the free throw line. He went to shoot the shot, made the first one. The Turkish crowd. This really was the first time, probably one of the only times that I faced like racism on the court. There were the chants and all this type of stuff. But he made the first shot. As he lined up to take the second shot, somebody had thrown a coin and it hit him on the arm. So obviously the referee stopped the game for a bit till he composed himself. He going up to the line. He hit the second shot, and all hell broke loose. The whistle went because it was just right near the end. They were throwing coins at us, and as we were running past them, they were trying to punch us and all that type of stuff. We got into the changing rooms. We were like, yeah, and all of a sudden there's stones being thrown at the window, and police are outside trying to dismantle the crowd and things like that. That was the scariest moment, I would say. For me at the time.
How did you guys get out of the arena? Okay, yeah, go on, carry on.
Well, we're in the sports center, but we had to walk to the hotel. And Sweden had qualified in that tournament, and on the way back, Sweden, they were sitting on the balcony, they were celebrating. They got egged by all the Turkish fans apparently, so we had to walk back to the hotel, and we had armed guard. And then we got back to the hotel. But while we were running from the gym, our team manager, a guy called Morris Wordsworth, never forget this. He was going around picking up all the coins off the court. So we got back to the hotel. We were qualified, and he goes, I think it was Colin Irish, I think, might have been the captain at the time. And he was like, here you go, Colin. Boom, gave him all this change. It's like, so we had a drink on all those supporters who were booing against us. So I remember that. That was a good night. That was a good night. That
amazing.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to quickly ask about when it came to national team playing was the Great Britain Olympic qualifiers, when you played against some pretty big legends of the game. Can you kind of what year was that? Was it 92 or 94? It was like early 90s. 92.
Yeah, it was 92. We went to Spain for the actual tournament, but Kevin Cadle was in charge of the team at the time, and that was a fun time. That trip. We came in. Season finished here, say May. We came in end of May, and we were together from there till probably end of June, 6 weeks, something like that, and training camps and playing. And we did play some big teams at the time. We played Yugoslavia in warm-up tournaments. We had Petrovic and Dino Raja, and I forgot the guy who played at Lakers, Divac.
Oh, right, yeah.
He played as well. Vlade Divac. Kukoc. So there was a lot of guys there that played, and we did well. We were close. Again, that showed what we could do if we had time. They were one of the best in Europe. But then we went on to the tournament. In our group was Lithuania, who had Maršalonis playing and Sabonis playing. He's definitely the best big man I've seen play live on the same court, Sabonis. You know, he was holding the ball like a tennis ball and just flipping it around, making passes all over the place. But again, they were held together by those two. As soon as they went out of the court, we would make our run, so they had to come back in. So, you know, we weren't far enough. We weren't far away from a lot of these teams. They just had one or two great players, which we didn't get to that stage yet. So that was a fun 6 weeks or so.
Did you go into that? Did you go into that qualifying tournament thinking that you had a shot at actually qualifying for the Olympics, or did you kind of go in thinking, yeah, this is a pretty long shot, but we're going to give it our best anyway?
Yeah, I think it was probably the second. If we did it, it would have been great. 2 teams qualified. We had our Russia at the time, CSSR, I think it was, and then Lithuania were the main two which qualified, and I think we may have ended up third, maybe fourth. So we were just slightly out. But again, you know, you're talking about coaches. Well, I've been lucky enough to play under some good coaches. I mentioned Chris and I mentioned Laszlo, but Kevin was another one. Again, the mental side of the game, he taught you know to win. Had to, you know, we needed to win. Yes, you know, people will say he had a lot of talented teams. However, with a lot of talented teams, you got to put that together. And sometimes it's harder than when you've got guys who aren't, you know, you're not expecting to win. You know, and he did that year on year on year, you know, with those talented guys. So I learned a lot from him there too.
So talking about kind of going back to the career timeline, so you're coaching in Sheffield. When did England first sort of come knocking and knowing that the 2006 Commonwealth Games were coming up?
It was my second year as a coach. I'd done the first year, which, as I said, we won the double there. Went for an interview for the role, which is strange because we practiced at the EIS where the English EBBA base was at the time. So from the practice floor, went in, got changed into the suit for the interview. I was interviewed by Dick Donaldson and Dan Lloyd. I think Dave Ransom as well. Those 3 guys. So, you know, obviously I must have interviewed well. I can't remember who else were interviewed on the interview panel, but they offered me the job, and the guy by the name of Keith Mayer, who was the basketball executive there, he ran the program. And I must say, I know he did get some bad press, but for me, he put a good program together for us. Him and the lady called Rad Miller, leading up to the Commonwealth Games. We had a lot of tournaments, a lot of practice time. I mentioned earlier about teams growing together. We once every month we managed to get the team together. Well, together wasn't necessarily the team, but the squad together to practice, and I think that helped break down barriers, because basketball, like, you know, guys are statistical. I can do this, I can do that, you know, type of thing. So I had to get across to them. It's not about your club side now. We're here on a national team. We got to play together. And I had 2 years to install that mentality, and like I said, I got that from Laszlo. Another thing from Laszlo as well was he implemented a player trust fund type thing, which I implemented again with the England side. So as time went on, we managed to get some funding. So we managed to get people like Mike Martin, Steve Bracknell to come in when they were part of that funding. However, for me, it wasn't fair if the other guys didn't get something as well. So we put together some sort of deal where guys who practiced, went to all the tournaments, they maybe not get to the squad, but they got something out of it. You know, so we put that together.
I was going to ask particularly about John Amici, because he'd obviously I think he'd retired at that point. Did he came out of retirement to play? Like, were you involved in kind of, you know, trying to get him to play, or kind of what was the conversations that were going on around that?
I think, if I remember, I think John wanted to play. He wanted to go to the Commonwealth Games. He wanted to represent England. So that's half of my job done. The other half was trying to get him into some sort of shape because, like you said, he had retired. So, but the easy bit was he wanted to do it. So he did things. He got himself motivated. He got himself in shape. By the time we got to the Commonwealth Games, obviously he wasn't in top shape of his career, but he was our focal point in the paint, and things rotated off him. And I think that was a big success of that tournament.
I look at the roster and there's clearly there's a lot of alphas, a lot of big names, big egos. Kind of, were there any moments in practices or training camps where you were like, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to pull this off and get these guys kind of on the same page playing with each other, or was it very much they were all bought in and were willing to sacrifice, I guess, their own personal individual status for the good of the team?
There was always battles. Let's say you're always trying to get guys to buy in. We don't do it this way. This is the way we're doing it here. By the end of the time, guys were bought in, especially when we got there. But people like Steve Bracknell, he was coming to the end of his career. Ronnie Baker coming to the end of their career. They were the ones that steadied the ship, if you like, helped bring things together. They were the calm heads. Sullivan was a big part of that team as well. To be fair, before then, I'd heard of Andrew Sullivan, seen him play a little bit, but I didn't realise how good he was. And when I saw him play those 2 years, he was definitely our best player. Unfortunately, he got hurt in the semi-final, which didn't help. But he was definitely the big player for us. And then we had other guys such as Jermaine Forbes, Julius Joseph. They did well. And a guy everybody thought was a bit of a clown, a guy by the name of Robert Reed. And why you got him there? But he was a bit of a loose cannon. But I tell you what, when it came down to it, he got the job done. He got the job done. And so I guess we had different mixes, but it all came together really well.
Was there expectation? Like, what were the expectations going into to the games with that group?
Well, it was basically we needed to try and get at least a bronze medal. That was the expectation. That's what we were aiming for. But I think maybe we could have gone a step further. We were a little bit unlucky in the semis. You talked about. Did you think you bit off a bit too much, more than you can chew? And I think that time came when we played Barbados in the first game. I was keyed up anyway because that was my parents come from there, so I was keyed up about it. First time we ever played them. Nigel Lloyd was the coach of Barbados as well, so I knew Nigel really well. And I had a couple of guys who played in the BBL. Andrew Elaine and Victor Payne, they played for the Barbados side too. They played in the BBL. We got to three quarters, should be winning quite comfortably. It was close. Can't remember if it was slightly down or slightly up, and that was the time I thought, wow, maybe it was a bit too much. We can't beat these guys. But then we ended up winning that game, and as I say, the rest is history. But I think, like I said, the learning curve, we played New Zealand in the group games, and Piero Cameron, who played at Chester, he was one of the guys on that team, and they just beat us up. We weren't ready for that type of physical play, but by the time we got to play Australia in the semi-finals, half-time, we were neck and neck with them. They're playing the same way New Zealand did, so we had learned from it. We got better. And as I said, Andrew Sullivan got hurt. And in the second half, they got hot as well, and our hopes faded. I think as those shots started going in, the Australian crowd got behind them a bit more, and confidence there. If we could have held out maybe to the end of the third quarter, who knows?
Well, when the moment that you actually, won the bronze, kind of, was there big celebrations? Was there any feelings of relief? Kind of, what was the general emotion, sentiment around you and the team?
Well, for the team that we had done what we came there to do. Everybody had said, right, we wanted to get the bronze medal at a minimum, and I think a lot of people doubted that we could do that. So for the team, yes, we done it. We got that. The final, the bronze medal match itself was strange because we played Nigeria, and we're warming up, and before the game, one of the baskets had broke. So then there was a big delay, maybe about 40 minutes or so. So we were sitting around waiting for 40 minutes, and I think we had adapted better than they did, because I remember at the time, right, when they said, right, you got so much time left to go on the court, we got everybody together and refocused type thing, and they were still out on the court doing whatever they did. And from the get-go, we jumped on them. I mean, that's one of the easier games we'd won, not because they weren't a good team or a talented team. It was just the fact that mentally we were ready. We got refocused, and like I said, we got the challenges from the New Zealand and the Australia game, which helped us get better. It was disappointing for me because my first thought when they said you're going to the Commonwealth Games, you've seen all these guys standing on the podiums, I'll be like, yes, I want to get up there, I want to get on the podium, do that. But their rules is only the athletes, coaches, and on the stage. It was a bit of a shame for me, but they still did it. Didn't actually get a medal either, which was a shame. It was all again players, coaching and support staff didn't get it. But that whole process, it did take a toll. I did feel drained at the end of it, but you learn a lot about yourself when you go through hard times. And one of the backroom staff I had there, I think, really helped. Firstly, Michael Hales was the assistant coach. He did a great job. He was he's another people person, so he would get the feeling of the player. He was like my bridge to the players type thing, and relay back how they were feeling, and we would adapt things that way. Physio, a guy called Alex Anselmo, he's been around the England team for years before then, so we kept him on. And a guy who I mentioned earlier, who was my school teacher, Kevin Hibbs, we ended up being a team manager for the team. And how that came about, he went from basketball into like the county scene, and then don't know how it worked, but he ended up being on the national team, national coaches panel or things like that. So when I sat down with Keith Mayer, we were trying to think about who we're going to have as team manager. Threw all these names out and mentioned Kevin Hibbs, and Keith was like, "Yeah, that's a good fit. That's a good fit." So, and it definitely was. It just shows you how things work out, doesn't it?
Things coming full circle.
Ago, he got me into basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah. If he hadn't got me into basketball, we wouldn't have been in that situation.
Wow.
So that was the end of the England thing. And the sad thing about it for me was that they didn't continue with an England program. It ended there really until the last Commonwealth Games, and it showed you that it's not as easy as everybody thinks to go and get the bronze medal. Because it started as Great Britain then, didn't it?
Yeah, I was literally
which was a shame. Yeah.
Was it hard to go from the Commonwealth Games, because it happens in the middle of the season, right? So you took essentially a month off in the middle of the season, then you had to go straight back into Sheffield.
Yeah, like I said, it did take a lot out, because not only were you concentrating on the national team, concentrate on your team as well here. So you didn't really have a break. So the weekends where you're supposed to have a break, you're with the national team. During the summer, you're supposed to have a break, you're with the national team. So for those 2 years, it was really full on. But I was, again, fortunate enough that Todd Coulthon was my assistant. So he's done a lot in the game. A good player. He knows the league, so he took over while I was gone and did a fantastic job. Without him there in the background, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. So you did another two more years in Sheffield before you ended up sort of retiring. How stepping down from the BBL as head coach. Kind of, how did that decision come around, and how did you feel about kind of, deciding to step away from coaching the Sharks?
Well, at the time, I didn't want to. They made a decision that financially they had to go in a different direction. So, that was that. Basically, they made a decision. So I went looking elsewhere to coach somewhere else. I remember Leicester, speaking to Leicester at one point, and they ended up getting Rob Paternoster, and he's done a fantastic job there ever since, hasn't he? He's been there a good while, and he's done a great job there. So, but then at the same time, I think it was probably about a month later, I went to India. I was doing a development sort of like program in India, that type of thing, and they were thinking about maybe me as their national coach. But when I got back home, my wife found a lump on her breast, and then obviously found out it was breast cancer. So that was the end of that. Really, I thought, well, can't go anywhere. We had a little child, so we got two kids at the time, so we got to put that first. So for a year, so I was out of the game. Luckily for us, she's fine. 12 years clear now, so which is great. But I got back into basketball by a team called Sheffield Sabres. They were in Division 3. Richard Windle was for him at the time, and he said, "Oh, come and play." I'm like, I'm 45 years old. Is he playing there? But the guy who runs the Sheffield Sabres program, he was the club doctor of the Sharks as well at the time, so I knew him well. So all right, I'll give it a go. First game, I remember going to Sefton in this cold gym, horrible change room. What the hell am I doing here? What am I doing? But after a while, you got the bug back, and then it was a good year. It was a good year. I think my knees are paying for it now, that extra year, but it was a good year.
And you're still coaching in Sheffield Sabres to this day, right?
Yeah. The next year I ended up coaching, and I've been doing that ever since, like you say. So what's that, 10, 11 years now? Maybe 12 years now.
The other thing I do have to quickly ask you is, can you still dunk?
I haven't tried. I did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, that's why I bring it up, is that at Bev Guyman's fundraiser down in Solent, I think you were 49 at the time. Ronnie Baker dumped it off to you on the break, and you got up and threw it down. So yes.
Well, I wouldn't call that a dunk. I'll just call it, I managed to get to the rim on that one. But I'll take it. At 49, you take that. But I remember it would have been a couple of years after with the Sabres guys. We were practicing, and you can't do that. I said, but I can still dunk. Nah, you can't do that. So I went up, still dunked it. So I was like, oh well, that was the end of that. But the one good thing as well from when you finish playing, you get to that Masters stage. So I ended up playing in the Masters tournament a couple of years. It must have been like 3 years ago now, I think. Again, we had the nucleus of the guys from the Sharks, Todd Cawthorne, Ian McKinney, together with Mike Payne. We played together on that, and that was the last tournament I played in, and I was going to say we won that tournament. So I went out on the champ.
Went out on top.
Yeah.
Do you, with the Sabres and obviously kind of getting around Division 3, do you feel like, do you feel like that people kind of have a recognition or understanding of who you are and kind of what you've done in the game, or do you think that it's very much people have got no clue?
Nah, I think even the guys on the Sabres team, they know you played basketball, but that's about it. They don't really know the depth of it all. Yeah. But to be fair, since this lockdown, like you say, they're putting all these different stats up and all that. I think they see you in a different light now. They're like, oh wow, it's like he does know what he's talking about.
Is there any part of you that kind of is like, I speak to you. Obviously, I spoke to Martin Hennon on the podcast last week. I speak to a lot of sort of figures from that era that now are disconnected from the game on some level. Like, well, in a way that really in the context of the British game, you're a living legend and you should be put on that pedestal, and kind of people need to realise kind of who you are and what you've done. Is there any part of you that kind of looks at, say, the GB programme, or even the BBL, and you think, you should be involved at a high level, you want to be involved at a high level, or kind of do you more feel like, I'm happy with Sheffield Sabres, I'm kind of still following through my career off the court, or do you think at some point, you'd love to be involved with the GB programme again, or if England was to set up for a future Commonwealth Games or whatever it is?
Yeah, I would love to be involved, but you've been so long at the game at that level. I don't know. It's an unknown quantity how it would be now. Some people say, you never lose it, and the bite. As soon as you get back, you pick it up. I don't know, but it comes a point where you've got to focus on other things. You got other things to that comes first place. Basketball wasn't at that point. You got family, you got the kids and bills and everything else. They got to come first. Yeah. So, done that. Yeah, it would be nice. It'd be nice if you like the NBA, you got paid as that high amount, so you didn't have to work. You could have still help in basketball and that type of thing at a high level. That would be great, but the finance isn't there, so you got to find something else to do.
Yeah.
I do think, like you mentioned, there's a lot of guys out there with a lot of knowledge of the game that is missing, that could be used around up and down the country. It's just a case of somebody pulling that together. How, I don't know, but there is a lot of guys out there. You look at guys I've played with, like Steve Bracknell, he's running his program down in Lewisham. They're doing a good job down there. I know Steve Nelson did at Worthing as well and did a good job there. His son and daughter now are played in the States or playing in Europe. So there's guys out there with a lot of knowledge that could help the youngsters of today. But I tell you what, being on the Sabres coaching, the attitude has changed in terms of playing. I look at it as this. Back then, when we played, it was, what do I have to do to get paid type thing, that attitude. Nowadays, it's like, you pay me first and I'll show you what I can do. That attitude changes. It takes a lot of adjusting to.
Yeah. How do you deal with situations like that?
Like with these guys, sometimes they got to learn the hard way. You say to them, do this, do that. They don't do it, so all right, you don't play. Or you let them make their mistakes, and then they're like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about now. So even at this level, at the Sabres, Division 3, start of the year, because you cannot rely on a group of guys, because they've got work, they've got colleges, they've got everything. So every year the team changes, it evolves. So start of the year, you're putting your things in place. It's hard for them to understand it, for them to get it. But by the time you get to Christmas and to the end of the year, things, you can see the massive improvement, and that's just with that level.
Have you since stepping down from I guess England, but also the BBL, and not being involved at that level, have the federations reached out to you in any type of capacity to try and get you involved in some type of way?
Not really. At the time when GB came around, I had just finished the England Commonwealth Games. My dad was ill at the time as well, and like I said, I just needed a bit of a break. So they were asking if I was going to apply for it. I said no. I think Chris did it, and he got the job, and he did a good job with it. But no, at that level. Actually, tell a lie. Came back a little bit with Paul James. They had like a England Futures team. A lot of guys. Matthew Bryant was on there. Justin Robinson. I'm trying to remember his name. Hamilton. Ashley Hamilton. He was on there.
Yeah.
There's a few of the guys that play in the BBL last year now were on that team. So Paul, that was done through Paul James. He was the head coach, and he asked me if I come and help. And loved that. That was early doors when I finished, just as I finished coaching, couple of years in. So that was good.
One of the things that Martin said, which I thought was quite interesting, was that he's, someone who was involved with the game for so long, is now completely disconnected from the professional league in terms of following it, knowing what's going on. He said he wouldn't be able to name you who the MVP was or who the top teams are. Like, do you follow the BBL in any type of capacity? Are you interested? If you are, like, what is it about it? If you're not, kind of, why do you think that you're not?
No, really. I have seen odd games here and there. Last year, I went down to see London at Crystal Palace. They played Chester. I think it was just before the playoffs started, towards the end of the league season. I went with my brother, and then I looked at the game. Funny enough, bumped into Alton Bird there as well, so that was good catching up with him. Wow. Yeah, but I looked at the league and I thought, I don't know whether I'm looking at it through rose-tinted glasses or not, but the feel of it just wasn't the same. Guys are athletic enough, but they didn't have the understanding of the game.
Yeah.
And I always compare it to like Division 3. The only difference between Division 3 and the BBL, the games I've seen, is the fact that they're more talented. The understanding of the game's still not there. The BBL, they may be able to run high, run faster, jump high, make a few more shots, but the understanding isn't there.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, so.
What would the
I guess it's all down to finance, isn't it? It's down to finance.
What would the BBL need to do to re-engage you, like to make you a fan? What do you think the league would need? What would you need to see to be interested in following it?
I don't know. Is the honest answer. I think maybe certain players, like how the NBA lived off like Michael Jordan or Kobe, that kind of that flagship player that everybody's talking about. Maybe that might bring people back in, like myself who knows the game.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know, but it's like I said, it's hard when you've been out for so long. It's hard now.
Yeah. Okay, so we're out of time. Let's look at wrapping up with some sort of more quickfire questions just to finish up. Starting with favourite coach you ever played for?
Oh, like I mentioned, a few good coaches, but I think probably Laszlo probably tipped the scales. I think it would be Laszlo.
Toughest player you ever had to guard?
There's so many of them. I guess for my sins, I was quite versatile, so I guarded guards right up to big men. I would say probably the toughest guard was a guy called Bubba Jennings. He could shoot from anywhere. I remember the first time I played against him, he shot from there and off the halfway line and went in. I was like, wow, well, I'm gonna have to do something different here. You guard Tony Dorsey towards the end of my career. He was another tough player when we were playing against Manchester. There's been so many good players and great players to name them all. Colin Irish is another one. He was the type of guy where you think, well, I've got him quiet. He will take one shot and then that's it. He's off again. Al Cunningham, another. So a lot of good players.
Best British player you've ever seen, played with, played against?
For me, that's the easy one. It's got to be Steve Bracknell.
What do you think separates Steve?
The mental side of the game is a lot to do with it. The work ethic he had was to do with it. He just wanted to get better, and from a lad, I knew him as a kid. The way he improved year on year. Even like you talking about a jump shot, he couldn't shoot the ball really to start off with, and by the end of it, he was deadly with it. So yeah, I love playing same team as Steve.
And then
Roger Huggins close second.
And the best British junior player you've ever seen?
I don't know. I remember Andrew Bailey he was during his time at juniors. He was tough. it was tough. There's quite a few guys that I could talk about. Lord Deng as well when he was down in London. He's another one that springs to mind. Playing against him in the I was coaching by that time, but that stood out as well. How good he was. I think he was about 15, might have been 15, 16 at the time when I played him, and you could see he was. The way he was defending me was like, no, I'm not gonna let you have anything. I'm not gonna let you have anything. It was all it was all up there. I was like, hold on, man, I'm an old man. Give me a break.
You
could see he had the attitude.
Your favourite basketball memory?
Probably. Well, to do with basketball, the favourite memory is getting the MBE from the Queen. I think that's something you didn't expect. Start playing the game, because you enjoyed it and you got to that. That was probably my biggest memory of the game.
We didn't even touch upon that. So just quickly, how did that come about? Did someone nominate you? Like, do you kind of know how it actually came to be?
I think you get nominated. And then obviously whoever the palace aides and representatives will have to ratify it. So we did. We were away at the time and come back. It would have been about May time. Got this letter, looked at it, had the royal seal on it. That's not right. Well, opened it up and said, "You've been, awarded MBE. Don't say anything to anybody." It's coming out in like probably about a month or something. You couldn't say anything. I think I told my mum. So that was, again, I had to look at the letter again to make sure that it was real. And funny enough, as I said, during this lockdown, I found it. I found the letter in one of the bags.
Wow. And then finally, what do you want your legacy to be?
Hey, I don't know. It's different because some people know you as just a player. Some people know you as just a coach. Because some guys, especially early days in Bracknell, like I said, I was doing the sports development work. A lot of them now, they're still saying I got them into the game. So that was a good thing. But at the end of the day, it's just like remember you make your mark. My dad always said, "You're here for a short time. Make your mark." When basketball was my mark, and I guess I've made it. Made that mark anyway. It'll be in the record books for a while anyway.
Perfect. That's a perfect place to leave it. Pete, thank you so much. Much appreciated. It was super insightful, super interesting, and I'm sure we will catch up again soon.
No worries. Thank you.